Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. Hey everybody, it's Jeff, and you are listening to Pathways to Greatness podcast. And on today's episode, I have Allison Roberts, and she is the founder of How to Get Recruited. That's also where you can find her on Instagram. And we got into it, so I didn't have her give her full background. So I'll give you just a little bit here. It was a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed it. So Allison is a recruiting coach for volleyball athletes, and she creates an opportunity for parents and athletes to learn more about the recruiting process. And then she teaches and coaches, very similar to Janie Bolte, who I had on here previously. Just a great resource for families. And the big lesson that I took from today's episode is all of these things that and it's not a surprise that we're working with our young people and our kids now are things that will help them in the future. They may not see it, but we know as parents is that we're building a solid foundation as they go, and getting help doing that as a parent, there's nothing to be ashamed of. People like Allison bring a valuable voice to the table of understanding what they need to do and how they need to do it. And then there's credibility that goes along with that. And they are also there to help the student athlete achieve their dreams. So don't overlook that. Don't overlook of bringing someone in to help. And as an adult, don't overlook if you need somebody that you want to be coached up, if you're looking to start a new business, if you're struggling in the business that you're in now, if you have things that you want to do and overcome and just want to be a better dad or better mom, you can do that. There are so many resources out there that you can bring in that will say a lot of the same things that you can get for free, but there's a level of accountability when you have somebody in front of you. So Allison and I, we had a great conversation just around some of the would you rathers about fear, about communication, about understanding the importance of human connection. And it's a great episode. Allison, thank you for coming on the show today. And I know that everybody will find what she has to be extremely valuable. And if you're looking for any of her information, please go to the show notes and you'll find it there. So without further ado, Allison Roberts. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. And on today's show, we have Allison Roberts. So yet another Instagram find that I've had. And so I came across Allison and she came across me through an interview with Coach Jeff Hubner, which we both are a huge fan of. And then I revealed that I had Coach Chuck Waddington on here. So she's going to find that. I'll find what episode number that is. I wasn't going to waste our time today, but I'll be sure to send that to you. It's so good. It's really good.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Allison, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I actually Jeff was my last guest on my podcast a few weeks ago. So small world.
That popped up, and that's what I saw, because I always see your educational stuff, and everybody knows that has listened to this episode, my show, that I have a daughter who plays volleyball. And then actually this week's episode, so this will come out next week. So what is that, the 31st? Yeah. So right
Easter
before
weekend.
the end of, yeah. And I just had an episode that I did about my daughter, about how proud I was because she was asked to play up at the NEQ. So it was a really cool opportunity for her, but I don't want to waste your time talking about her because I could do that all day long.
Oh, please. That's our job as parents. We're supposed to be proud of our kids and talk about them every chance we get. We got to hype up our kids. Yes.
And I'm ad nauseum. People that follow, they'll come across me on Instagram. They're like, well, we know what's important to you. I was like, well, good. That's your brand. It's Jesus and my family. There's not much else.
It's exactly what it should be.
Yeah. Okay, so if you've listened to the episodes, which I think you may have, I always like to play a game called Would You Rather. I've changed it up a little bit. It's
Love
still
it.
Would You Rather, but the questions are slightly different. Are you ready?
Okay, absolutely.
Okay. Would you rather fail publicly pursuing a big vision or succeed quietly playing it safe?
I feel like it's easy to say fail publicly, but that is what I was attempting to do when I started doing what I'm doing now. So I'll definitely say fail publicly. Go hard or go home.
Yeah. What do you think? And I'm sure that it's pretty consistent with everybody. What do you think it is that cripples some people from even trying anything because of that public failure that may happen?
I mean, it's just pure fear. I think fear is one of the biggest things that just holds us back in life. And I think everybody has that exhibits differently. But that's something I see with student athletes who are afraid to say out loud that they want to play in college, or they're afraid to start posting content to make those connections or try to. I just talked to an athlete the other day who was considering NIL, but a little bit nervous to start it because what are my friends going to think? And what if it doesn't work? And I asked her, I was like, what do you have to lose? There's student athletes. I was not able to benefit from NIL when I was an athlete. And there's athletes who are making really good money doing that. If you failing is not making that amount of money, is that really failing? Or is that, going for it and it looks a little bit different than maybe you thought it would? So yeah, I think that's a very common thing that holds everybody back. But I think I learned humility at a very young age. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, did a lot of theater growing up. And so humility is kind of like, you got to be willing to make yourself a fool sometimes and forget the line or, do something to get the laugh. So I think that was something early on that I was not intimidated by.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up theater. Nobody's ever brought that up. And when you said that, as soon as I thought of it, I think that's something everybody should have to do, because what do they say is the number one thing that most people are afraid of?
Public
Over dying is public speaking. And theater is one of those things. It's like you put on a different persona and you go for it. And it's a lot of fun. Like when you really just go without, any care, it's a lot of fun.
Genuinely. And so much of what I do now, like when I started doing social media stuff, that was it's like, who do you want to be? Like, who are you at your core? What is your persona, let's say? And I always did a lot of comedy in theater. I tried a couple dramatic roles and I was just awkward and weird. I was like, I like having fun with things and making people laugh. And that's what I did. And I think that's what's worked well and maybe made me a little bit different than most in that category. So I absolutely love theater. I love public speaking. I think it's something that is super important for kids to be doing at a really young age. Even my kids at their school, that's kind of a thing that they teach them at their school. They do a presentation once a week where it's like a show and tell. They get up in front of their class and start talking about it. I think there's just so much really rich stuff to be learned from those different categories.
Yeah, and we could go on and on about this because I'm a huge fan of that as well. And you just don't see it that often in the public school system anymore. At least in Florida, you don't. And you see the fear, you see the frustration. So it's trying to figure out ways to artificially create that for our kids, because as a child, for sure, as a student athlete, as an adult, you can easily separate yourself from everybody else if you're a clear communicator and you can stand up with confidence. You immediately take over the room.
100%. And it carries over to whatever you choose to do. When you enter into adulthood, if you're going to be in the business world, you need to be able to speak with confidence and you need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations and be in that little bit of the uncomfortable, situation to be able to speak into that. So I think that that's so important.
No, that's great. Well, and now I'm just thinking about all these things as a child that I got to do that you don't see a lot of people get to do now. Is that I grew up going to a small church. So we were thrust in front of the congregation to pray, to lead in prayer, to lead singing. I'm not a singer. But it was one of those things, you were in a safe place because everybody knew you were going up there. It was scary. But now that as you're talking, I'm thinking of what were the things that got me prepared? It was theater. It was standing up and doing things in front of people at church and having those opportunities. You just don't see that as much anymore because you have these larger churches that have more formal, worship teams and all of these things that just a lot of young people don't have these opportunities. So now my brain's going all these different directions.
Yeah. And we can go all the way down that rabbit hole because I feel our society, our culture really glorifies comfort and safety. And so to be in front of people, to be vulnerable, to do something different, to have everybody looking at you, I think that's why it's so scary, because it is genuinely a very vulnerable place to be. But yeah, I just think it gives you back so much. And I was a little bit shy when I was a kid too. And it was kind of one of those things you have to choose to not be afraid. I was always nervous before, but I would tell myself, it's kind of like just jump in the deep end, just go and act like you're not scared. And then I would get comfortable while I was doing those things. So it's, huge valuable lessons that, I really hope that my kids, and they've had a couple opportunities to do stuff like that, but I don't care what they choose to do, but I hope that they do choose to experiment with some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking of ways to do that for young people is to have podcast conversations like this. I've asked, but not consistently. I should ask my son again. So he's graduating high school this year.
Cool.
Of just having one of these and he's been interviewed before, does not like it. Like he doesn't like putting himself out there. He's very reserved, but not reserved, if that makes sense. It's just, he does not like to be the center of attention at all. He's an offensive lineman, so he's fine just doing his job, celebrating with everybody else and just kind of moving on. But I do feel, and he's well spoken, but there's a lot of kids that just haven't had that training to be able to go through and have those conversations to where, they do all the things we know you shouldn't. They look away, they put their head down, they mumble, and that has lasting impressions that if you don't fix young, it will carry into your adulthood.
100%. And it affects their confidence as well, because them being able to hold themselves in a confident light, kind of the fake it till you make it thing. If you are, small and quiet and doing the limp handshake, don't learn to look people in the eye. I think that's something that can affect their overall confidence later in life too.
For sure. See, look at that. We've gone 10 minutes and we're on the first question. That's right. Okay. So here's another one that's kind of in the same vein. So would you rather have the fear of failure or the fear of wasted potential?
I would say the fear of wasted potential, because I want to be using what I have well rather than trying and failing at something.
Do you feel, and I know this is a closed-ended question, so I could try to phrase an open-ended, but whatever. Do you feel that this is learned over time? So meaning that you have people that are older and more experienced would go this route, the wasted potential, versus a young person would answer it differently?
Oh yeah. 16-year-old me would have been terrified of failure. I think as an athlete and as a kid in theater, and I was in band, I did a lot of things that were in front of a lot of people. And there were moments I screwed up. I missed what could have been, I missed game point against the other team. I still have a game in college that haunts me a little bit. Specifically, I had a moment in band where I was playing the chimes and I hit it so loud when I was not supposed to. And it was just like so, 16-year-old me was scarred by those moments. Me in my 30s, I'm like, who really cares? Everybody's going through something like that. So I would definitely say you grow thick skin. Well, you can grow thick skin over time. But yeah, at this point, I have had enough conversations with people who none of us really know what we're doing. we're all figuring it out day by day. And I think 16-year-old me thought that I had to have it all together. And if I didn't have it all together, that I was failing somehow. So I would say that I have learned to not fear failure later in life. It still sucks when it happens, but I'm not usually acting with fear for failure.
Right. I like the way you phrase that at the very end, is that I was plagued with fear of failure. I mean, well into my adulthood, because it was a self-esteem thing. I felt as if I did everything perfect, that everybody would like me. Well, nobody's perfect.
Doesn't quite work out.
Not everybody's going to like me. So it's such a vicious, it's a prison to be trapped in. And so many people are trapped in it because of comparison and what we see on social media, how successful we think other people are. And like you said, is that we're all going to get it wrong. We all get it wrong. And it's that moment, I think of, I always make this correlation, is when you finally realize that teachers aren't perfect. We thought that everything that at least growing up my age, is that teachers were always perfect. And then you realize they're just as messed up, if not more, than the rest of us, and it's tough, and parents aren't perfect. He's like, when that moment where you realize, oh, wow, my parents, they don't know everything, but they do know a lot, and they did everything because they love me, but they're also not perfect. So it's that weird transition that we all go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wisdom. Okay. So would you rather feel called or qualified?
Ooh, these are really good questions. I would definitely say called, because qualified doesn't equal the right fit. There have been plenty of jobs that I was qualified for, or people. Since I've been doing what I do now, I've had a lot of job offers come, in different forms and formats, and a couple I considered, couple I knew very quickly were not the right fit. But at the end of the day, I just felt very called to be able to serve my family with what I'm doing right now, which is, obviously my number one. I'm always going to be a mom before I'm a recruiting coordinator. So that was a big piece for me. And then the other piece is this truly where I'm meant to be? Is this what God has called me to? Is this a thing that is good for me, good for my family, good for the other party? And if it's not, then there's really no point, even if I may be qualified on the surface to be able to do those things. I really want to make sure that there's correct purpose, I think, behind those things.
And that goes in line with, and I hope the audience picked up the theme, is that your final answer for that really goes in line with all the other things. Is that if you're called to do something, you can't have fear be in front of it. It can exist, but you can't let it hold you back if you truly feel like you're being called into something. And sometimes it's seasonal. Is we're called into something for a moment. Is look, I don't know if this is going to be me forever, but I know it's me for right now. And so I'm going to try to get everything I can and try to be where my feet are and get the most out of the moment. Because who knows, in 15 years, are you going to still be doing the same thing? Who knows? But if we worry about that, then you're going to stop, or, well, I'm not qualified to do that. I didn't do X, Y, and Z. And it's like starting this podcast. Like, I'm just another guy. There's 2 million podcasts that are out there, but it's been an amazing process for me just to meet people like you. And it gives me a platform to have good conversations to help the people that choose to listen. But if I would have said, well, I'm not qualified, like, who am I? I'm just Jeff from Orlando. I never would have done it. And there's, you'll be episode 167.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I've done 167 of these in a row.
Wow.
And so that consistency is something that hopefully other people see and like, well, if he can do that, it's just something simple, even if it's just recording a solo episode. But it's just having those moments that we can have to be proud of, that if we're called there. And you, like, how did you know you were called to do what you're doing? Like, what did that feel like?
Felt like a slap in the face, honestly. It was very much like I walked into a door or so. It was very it was odd because, I have to share a little bit of my backstory for it to make sense. My husband is in the military, and I was a college coach before he went active duty. When he went active duty, I was pregnant with my oldest. I have 3 kids. We had 3 kids in 3 years, and it did not make sense to coach in college during that time. But the goal was always to get back to coaching in college, was really kind of my main goal. That becoming a mom changes you in a lot of ways. And in those few years where I was focused on being a parent, I was coaching club volleyball and having a lot of fun doing that, and working as a recruiting coordinator for the club that I was with in Tennessee. And in doing that, it kind of got my gears turning. I was like, kids really need help with recruiting. And I did some seminars with my club, and I just kept seeing this really big glaring issue. And my husband was actually deployed. I had a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 6-month-old, something like that. And he was deployed, and I don't know what possessed me. I mean, it was the Holy Spirit. That's the only thing it could have been. Literally, I was like, what if I started a business? I don't even know if it was a business, but it was like, I have to do something with this. Like, this is something that's needed. I miss working. I can't go back to college with these, coaching college with these kids like this. And there's no reason for it. I had my plate completely full. I didn't need to add to my plate, but for something possessed me that I was like, I need to do this. And my husband came home, and I told him, I was like, I have kind of a crazy idea. And he was like, do it. I explained it to him, and he was like, yeah, sounds good. Go for it. And I just kind of started doing it. And it was very much kind of, you didn't say it directly a minute ago, but a little bit when I started was like, is anybody going to want to listen to me? I'd been out of the game for a long time. Nobody knew who I was. I was starting from scratch. I had zero, I'd been out of coaching volleyball for almost 4 years at that point. So it was kind of like, why would anybody listen to me? A little bit, a lot of those kind of thoughts, and just kind of slowly grew. I remember the day I got my first client, and I was just over the moon. And it grew into what it is today. I'm able to support my family. I'm doing this full time. I absolutely love what I do. I get to work with amazing kids, sent kids to every level of college volleyball that exists. And, it's fun. I love it. And it gives me the, family life balance that I wanted so desperately, that is hard, when you're coaching in college. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to how did I feel called to do what I'm doing. It came out of nowhere. It was not even in my brain, and it just, took over. And that was 4 years ago now, actually. It was in March that he was deployed, and he came home, and I told him that. So it's been a crazy journey.
That's awesome. And I hope the audience heard that, is that, again, going back to the would you rather questions, is yes, you were qualified. You had the resume that would give you credibility to families, but you'd never done that before. So how many times have we been challenged with things in our lives that we say, I don't know. We let that voice start to speak to us, and we start to believe it because it's telling us to stay comfortable, to do what you need to do. And you would have been fine not doing it. It's not like it was the end of the world, but just think of, like you said, as the people that you've been able to help and interact with, the families, and setting people on a trajectory that they may never have gone on before without you. And it's just such a really cool mission field that, if we look at all of those callings as a mission field, to me, it changes my approach to that situation.
100%. And it really pours into every aspect of it. And I've been able to build relationships with college coaches and club coaches and recruiting coordinators. I have met so many people getting to do what I do. And it's like such a gift. I could have been very safe and just stayed in my house and just, gone about and done my day-to-day and stayed in my little bubble. But because I've gotten out of my bubble, I've met just like such cool people that I never in a million years thought would want to even have a conversation with me. And I think that was a little bit of, my backwards pride of like, oh, nobody's going to want to, but when 99% of people out there, especially, I feel like the volleyball world is so unique and supportive. And I feel like 99% of people are so willing to have a conversation and, answer questions. And it's been such a huge, immense blessing for me. And yeah, it's been a wild ride too.
Well, the volleyball world is a wild ride.
It is a wild ride. Buckle up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the last would you rather is maybe the most important one that I ask. So
Okay.
Would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Tacos. And this is this is me and my husband and our difference. My husband is a pizza fanatic. He loves pizza. It's his favorite food of all time. I'm from Texas. I grew up eating Mexican food. Breakfast tacos is like the highest order in my mind. Yeah, I'm a taco gal, Mexican all the way. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'd be so happy.
Okay, so you said breakfast tacos are popular. So what would be another, like, what are your go-to if you had anything on the menu that you can order? What is your typical taco order?
So I cook a lot as well. I love cooking. That's another one of my passions. But if I'm ordering, so my other thing is diversity fuels me. I am not the person who goes to the restaurant and has my usual. I'm like, I want something different every time I go. And we actually had Mexican food last night. And so I love barbacoa. I love barbacoa tacos. I love carnitas tacos. I love enchiladas. I love burritos. I love nachos. I love gorditas. I love torta. We have an amazing place by here that has the best tortas I've ever had. I genuinely, I'm not discriminatory toward Mexican food. I'm here for all of it.
There you go. You welcome.
All of it, fiercely and passionately.
I love it. Well, thank you for answering all those. So, yeah. Allison, like we talked about, I started this podcast, goodness, now 3+ years ago. And I started it with the idea of knowing everybody has a different definition of greatness, and they've been similar but different. But more importantly is nobody has had a linear path. Nobody's had a point A to point B. It's a straight line without any obstacles or challenges, because we all know there's ups and downs, twists and turns. And so ultimately, why I bring people on like yourself is because I just don't want people to quit. I want people to be resilient, develop the skill of resilience, because I think it is a skill that you have to push and learn how to push through those uncomfortable situations. So with all that being said, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
I think as a business owner, especially, and again, 16-year-old me has a very different answer than me today. I think such a big part of it is being able to achieve what you want your life to look like. And that's a very long-term and broad definition, but I think everybody wants something different. And for me and my family, we don't need a giant mansion or anything like that. But for us, it's so much more about like our day-to-day and what we want our life balance to look like and how we want to be present with our kids, but also obviously have to put food on the table, So I think a very big part of that, I think it's just what do you want your life to look like, and how can you being able to create that for yourself, whatever that looks like for you. I think if you can go back and look and say, I created this for me, I created this for my family, I just think that's such a beautiful thing to be able to achieve. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind.
It's a great definition. So, and I've heard similar, and it's, all about vision. You have to have a vision. And would you say, or how did you know what your life looks like? That would be a question, because I know a lot of people want that. And it's easy said that, hey, I want my life to be the way I want it to look like. I see it though. Most people don't actually formally prepare what they want their life to look like. Right.
So how do we bridge that gap between this is what I want and making it so?
Yes.
Again, it's different for everybody. For me, and what I'm still working to create is just the the life balance, being able, honestly, greatness for me is being able to pick up my kids from school every day and being able to drop them off and being able to, I had to take my kids' lunch back to school the other day, which is annoying, but it's a blessing at the end of the day that I have the flexibility to do that, you know? So I really think, you know, it's so hard to speak in generalizations. For me, it's really being able to have my boxes for work that are for work. And this is how I can serve my families and develop relationships and network well and be able to really put my nose to the grindstone and get things done. And then I have my boxes for my family. I can take my kids to the lake. I can take them to do these things. We're not flying to Europe this month. Like, we're not going to, we're not doing any of those things. But for me, it's genuinely, it's presence with my family. And, you know, if I can create that, I have to be able to work in those work boxes to create that flexibility for us. And there's weeks where I absolutely fail to do that. And we're, you know, at a park and I'm on my phone and tic-tacking away and always feel guilty for doing that. But yeah, I think it's being able to really dedicate my time well so that I can have that flexibility to do the things that I want to do with my family.
Well, and again, I always remind the listeners that I hope that they heard what you had to say, because you said it, even though it was hard to formulate, you knew exactly what you wanted everything to look like. And if you're listening to Allison share what she wants, and you can't just rattle off exactly what is super important to you and what you want it to look like, I urge you to sit down and write that out and just have a concept of, well, what does all that look like? So when you get that random call and like, okay, so they forgot their lunch today, or I told them to put that back in their bag, but then I get a message like, oh, can you bring that? Well, one day we're not going to have, they're going to be, you know, out of the house, and we're not going to have those opportunities to take those. And so I cherish each of those moments, and had a really good conversation with a friend of mine, is that I make my son's bed. And here, this guy, my buddy's super macho, a great mentor, father mentor to me. And he's like, oh, well, don't tell anybody. I used to make my son's bed every day.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Because it was just one of those things that at one point you make it and then it doesn't get unmade for a while.
Right.
And so it's those moments that we have to just cherish and understand how important they are, and have gratitude for those moments. So how do you help a young person? Because this, for people that are adults who have gone through life and, like we talked about before, can look back about wasted potential and those things. How do you help someone that's 14, 15, 16 think about, well, what do I want as I'm making these decisions and moving forward?
Yeah, man, that's what I do. And I think it's really hard for, you know, I always say athletes because that's what I work with. But, you know, any student, any kid at that age probably has a picture in their mind of what their future will look like. It's probably playing in the NBA or being a multimillionaire or being a YouTube influencer or whatever it is. Maybe that is in the cards for them, but you know, 99% of the kids, it's not. So I think, you know, specifically speaking to what I do and helping volleyball athletes playing college, a big part for me is we've already defined the goal of wanting to play in college. That's great. And we're going to talk about that and address that and make a plan for that. What about everything else that's going to affect your college experience? Because most athletes have only thought that far. If I want to play in college, and I probably want to play at Nebraska or Texas or, you know, one of these great schools, which is an amazing goal. But how do they want their day-to-day to look like? Do they want their academics to take over their course load? If the dream is to go to Stanford, to go to Harvard, to go to these Ivies, are you okay that your academics will be your life and you also play volleyball? You know, what do you want the culture of the university to look like? You know, for students who are interested in attending a Christian school and having their faith be an integral part of their academics and their athletics as well, Is that a priority? Are you okay with having 7 hours of chapel a week that's required? You know, there's so many layers to that. There's the financial conversation. There's so much else. So for me, with athletes, when we've defined that goal, we want to play in college, I really try to just broaden their mind. And it's really hard asking a 14-year-old, what do you want out of your college experience? They're like, what do you mean? I want to play volleyball. It's like, okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit. And one thing I have found to be extremely helpful when talking with students about that very kind of ethereal college experience is getting really specific, giving them either ors. Would you be happier in a big city with a lot going on, maybe fighting traffic, but there's lots of concert, lots of things to do? Would you rather be in a small town where there's hiking or outdoor stuff, or, you know, it's mostly just college life? Giving them very different scenarios to think through, and they're allowed to change their minds on what they think through. But I think just giving them something concrete to hold on to that is outside of the sport itself really helps them start to visualize more about what that life will look like in college.
That's great. And what's great about having people like yourself is that you're not mom and dad. You're
Right,
you're
exactly.
you're a different voice, pretty much saying the same thing, but it hits different. And that's why I'm just such a proponent of aunts and uncles and coaches and teachers and pastors and people that are a dotted line into the family that can add so much value. And as a parent, we have to not be so insecure that we don't have to have all the answers. And that if you come back and you're working with, you know, a young person and they go, guess what Coach Allison told me? Don't say, well, I've been telling you that for the last 2. Who cares? They finally heard it. And so now they're excited and they're moving forward. So just do what you can to push things along. There's a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's a great book. And it just talks about what you were sharing in the sense of this guy coaches high level C-suite people. And his perspective. And what's great about the book is you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can just find a topic and dig into it.
Writing it down.
But
so
he
I don't
talks
forget.
about how he's not teaching these guys how to be successful because they're highly successful in what they do. He's like, I'm teaching them what not to do. And one of the things that he talks about is don't always try to one up the conversation. As parents, we are really, really guilty of doing that because of insecurity. And so that book's helped me as a parent, definitely in my professional life, but as a parent as well, because it just teaches you to listen and just go, oh man, that's amazing. You know, I remember when I went on a trip like that and I really enjoyed it. What else did you enjoy? Versus me trying to steal the spotlight away from my child who's excited about this thing that's just happened the first time. And it makes me get nostalgic, but then I hijack the conversation. And so it's a great book. Great book.
I wrote it down. I love a good business read. I try to have a fiction read, a business read, a spiritual read. So that'll be next on my list.
Yep, it's a good one. And it gives you all these tools that young people can benefit from as well. It talks about eliminating the word but in all of your conversation, of just really having to slow down how you speak and what you say so you're really thoughtful of that impact. And again, as parents, I know my audience, we use the word but far too many times to where subconsciously you're telling them whatever was said before the but means absolutely nothing. It's like, you did a great job cleaning your room, but yeah. So
guilty.
Sorry, I think I just hijacked the conversation.
No, that's right. And honestly, I won't say a majority. I will say a lot of families want to work with me because they do need another voice in the space, because recruiting is stressful. Youth sports is stressful. And I think a lot of times it will there's usually some kind of imbalance in either the athlete or the parent and the action being taken and the dreams on the table and all of that, there's usually some kind of imbalance and frustration from both parties, and it can lead to a lot of conflict. And so that is a space I've stepped into pretty regularly with my athletes, is being that neutral party who this is what I do, and I can speak from authority, whether it's the same thing as mom and dad were telling you or a little bit different. Students are usually ready to listen because, they have some, skin in the game now and really need to buckle in and make a plan and take those action steps. So I think, whatever is going on in the family, if there's an imbalance, if there's stress, having that third party can really be so helpful when it's the right person to be able to take some of that stress off of the relationship and just, put the blinders on, put the focus on, and make sure that we're all working towards the same goal.
And a lot of it sounds like you just ask a ton of questions and just allow them to share.
That is a lot of, especially the early days with athletes, because a lot of times either they don't know or they have a really narrow vision, and it's like, okay, are we only going to reach out to 3 schools because the odds of us finding an opportunity there is very limited. So yes, it is a lot of questions. And then as they mature, as things start moving forward, then it's a lot of thinking about what's next and for athletes, how to advocate for themselves and how to be the proactive one in the process and request for that next step instead of waiting for a coach to come to them and to ask them, how can the athlete go out and create that for themselves? I would say that's another large piece.
Yeah. And again, I would challenge the listeners to think, does any of this stuff sound familiar? Not about your child, but about you, about how you carry yourself and as an adult. And I know through my son's recruiting process, I see a lot of things that I didn't really learn until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, of how to manage through some of those things. And here he is at 16, like staring a coach right in the face and saying, what do I need to do to get an offer?
Love it.
I was like, holy smokes, man. I was like, I never would have asked that question at 16. I would have been so scared. And so I just doted on him and was so proud of him for that. Cause I know how scary that had to be.
Yeah.
And, cause it was just him and this coach and he just flat out asked him. And I was like, man, that was awesome. And that's what's great about what you do is you're teaching life skills wrapped in a recruiting idea. And it's so important to think about, what we can do on how to carry those things into adulthood. So if you think about some of those things, the path that I want to go down now is, as you look at what you do for young people, what are some of those things that you're able to coach a young person in now that you wish you would have known then? Does that make sense? I don't know if that
100%
came out right.
Because honestly, not 90. Okay, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration. So much of what I do now, I learned as a 16-year-old fumbling through my recruiting process, for better or for worse. And I love that you said that, like your son saying, how can I get an offer from you? Translates to him in the business world 10 years from now saying, how can I earn your business? Like it's so applicable, like on both sides. And I think when the best thing for athletes, the best things for people probably is to get uncomfortable and to get okay with being uncomfortable, because it's in those moments. I just talked with an athlete the other day. She's going to go to summer camps and we were talking some strategies for that. And a big one, I'm like, you have to go to every member of the coaching staff at some point during camp, shake their hand, look them in the eye, tell them who you are, tell them thank you for having me here, tell them that you love their school and you're really interested. And she's too young to have recruiting conversations, but she can say that. And I think being able to do that with confidence, it's amazing. And I think that breeds confidence to be able to have those conversations for people who, for student athletes, college coaches are celebrities. They're like they worship the ground that they walk on. They're so intimidated by them. Like, it's just a very natural thing, especially the younger that the athlete is. And so such a transferable skill is the phone calls, like the in-person conversations as well, but the phone calls. So many athletes are intimidated by speaking on the phone with an adult they don't know. And I understand that. I've had athletes who have had panic attacks before a call and they had to cancel it and figure it out because it feels like this big, scary, if I screw this up, my life's not going to work out. Or, there's a lot of lies that they can believe. And, it's like a tripwire is triggered in their head and then they just kind of stumble down this big thing. So I think really just being comfortable talking to people they don't know, being comfortable speaking about themselves, because that's another thing in the recruiting process. The recruiting process is marketing. It's telling coaches who you are, why you're going to make their team better, and why they should be interested in you. Most teenagers, if you ask them about their strengths, they're like, I feel like it's one of two ways. They either are too excited to talk about their strengths or like, I don't want to talk about myself. So just having that balance of being able to talk about themselves, to talk to other people, it genuinely can give them so much confidence in life. And they're going to have to do that in the business world, in the medical field, in whatever they choose to do. They're going to have human relationships and be able to develop that. So the younger that we're able to do that and do that with confidence and understand that coaches aren't these big, scary people who are going to be mean, or, that they're nice and they'll shake your hand and they'll take the picture with you and all that. I just think those are such formative conversations for athletes.
And it's like Allison shared, is it's so important in life. I mean, you have to be able to have, we talked about this at the very beginning, you have to be able to communicate with people. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to share your thoughts, your convictions, what you believe, what you don't believe. And of course, there's times that you share more than others, but you stay authentic. And mm-hmm. like you said, is that one young athlete that even though they can't have recruiting conversations, she's practicing now. She's mm-hmm. getting comfortable and confident. So when it does matter, and every coach is going to remember her. If she mm-hmm. goes and does that, whether they knew who she was before, they're going to remember after, like, man, that was really nice. It's like writing a handwritten thank you card. Mm-hmm. Nobody does that anymore. Mm-hmm. And if you can just do some of those things in life, and again, this is for the adults listening too, is having those moments. If you're afraid to talk to people, which a lot of people now, I see it post-COVID, just so many people just don't want to have any interaction with anybody. Mm-hmm. I'm just getting old and grumpy and don't want to do it, but I can. Story. Yeah, exactly. It's by choice. Mm-hmm. But if you want to get uncomfortable, go introduce yourself to somebody today. Just go say, hey, if it's at Starbucks or wherever you choose to go, just do something and have some sort of a personal interaction. Your day will get better. It'll be mm-hmm. way different. And it's a good skill to have, because the more you can interact with somebody, the better.
Yeah. Find somebody to compliment. That's the easiest way for my introverts and for my people who cringe listening to that. Just find something to compliment. I was at the park yesterday with my son, and yeah, I get frustrated with the state of, and that's also me as an extrovert. So I do also have to bucket that, but I get frustrated when I'm 5 feet away from somebody and they don't even look at me. I'm always like, hi, like, we don't have to be best friends or talk or whatever, but acknowledging another human being, finding something to compliment, tell them, hi, how you doing? Something so short, it doesn't have to be anything monumental, and I don't think people expect anything more than that, but even just doing that can make somebody feel seen and heard. And I think that's such a valuable way to go about life.
It is. And that's what I like about sport, because you mm-hmm. have that, you're having to meet new people, have conversations with people. And for those who aren't involved in sport, you just have to create an intentional environment to where that happens. I grew mm-hmm. up you're making me have all this nostalgia of where I got some of like who I am. So my dad had a toy store, so retail business. Oh, cool. And so I loved to work there, mm-hmm. and I would love to run the cash register. So he taught me how to talk to people and the importance of making eye contact, paying attention to the person, because he's like, the person that's standing in front of you is the most important person because they're getting ready to hand you money. And so having that conversation, understanding the value of making somebody feel heard and understood, especially when they asked, hey, do you have such and such, knowing where that was at. That was all me getting curated on how to do that, where a lot of people they're with Amazon, you just don't do any of that. And so I'm glad you brought up the example of a park. So I like to have a challenge within each episode. One is to get outside. So like you talked about, go outside and go to a park and just say good afternoon to somebody. Like you said, you don't have to like find out about where they were born and all that stuff. Just say, look at them and just say good afternoon or good morning. And you're going to make an impact in that person's day.
I have to shout out my mom. A huge lesson that she left imprinted on us was, why would you leave a compliment in your head? So I like your hair. I like your bag. I like your dog. That's what I chose yesterday because somebody had the sweetest dog. Like, if you have a kind thought that comes into your head, you're never, I think a lot of times we're worried we're going to bother the person or like irritate them for some reason. But like, why would you not say the kind thing that is in there? I think nobody is going to take that poorly. Everybody is going to be uplifted by that in one capacity or another.
That's great. Another lesson, I'll give you one that my mom gave me.
Yes.
Is that also receive it. So how often do we have, if somebody's like, I like your shirt, oh, this old thing, or, oh, I got it for $6 at TJ Maxx, or like, just say thank you.
Thank you. So nice.
Say thank you. I mean, because you're wearing it, so you clearly like it as well.
Right.
So it's all about receiving as well. And so it's a great way to learn how to do those things. And again, young people have a real difficult time receiving compliments.
They do, yeah.
And you carry that forever. And most people really it makes them feel awkward if you're celebrating them and telling them how great they are. Most people feel very uncomfortable with that. Just learn how to say thank you.
Right.
And then move on, and it's tough to always do that.
It is. I feel like it's either so tough or so easy. It's so funny, different people and different perspectives and everything. There's some athletes who are so good at that. And they're like, oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. And there's other athletes who like blush and get a little like uncomfortable kind of thing. And it's funny to see the different personalities. And I think what drives different people with just, human interaction brings it out in people for some reason.
How do you help an athlete receive a compliment? Because again, they're evaluated on their performance. I mean, we all are in one way, shape, or form. They're definitely evaluated on their performance. And if you're not confident in your performance, why would somebody pick you? So how do you help someone receive that and use that in a humble, normal way?
Yeah, I don't know that I've had to specifically work with an athlete on receiving compliments. I don't think that's an issue I've necessarily ran into, but I've had to deal with a lot of quiet athletes who have a really hard time talking at all with college coaches or people. And for those athletes, it's a tough balance because it is who they are in some respects. And so I'm not trying to tell them to fake a different personality or, but we do need to, how was your season good is not a sufficient response. We do have to have a little bit. So we do have to respect the question and think about drawing it out. How can I give a better answer than that? But one thing for my quieter athletes that I have worked a lot on is you have to be very intentional with your words, and you have to be very explicit with your interest, because if you are quiet, I think it's really important to own that, because that's who you are. If the coach is going to accept that, they are going to accept that. If you're a good enough athlete, which I've had athletes kind of in that camp, fantastic athletes, but just super quiet, and it cost them some opportunities, but it also led them to where they are because they did find a coach who said, I'm here for it. I'm on board. So for those athletes, I have definitely said, you have you have to tell them, I'm a little quiet. I know that about myself. That's just kind of who I am. I'm really interested in your school. That doesn't affect how interested I am in this program. Because if we leave it up to interpretation, they might just interpret it that you didn't want to be on the call, or that, so many other things. So for those athletes, we really work on the language of being able to express interest and stretching as much as we can. But usually if an athlete is just a super quiet person, there's only so much we can do with that. So I don't know if that answers that question, but that's a situation I have worked a lot with on athletes.
It does. And the hope is that the adults listening, one, this may help them when they're coaching up their child but just themselves, of just thinking of, again, it goes back to what we talked about before, is communicating, being clear. You can be who you are, but you also don't need to accept that, well, I'm just quiet. Well, right. That's being comfortable. So what can you do to be a little uncomfortable and still stay within your personality and stay within who you are? I'm sure you've had the leadership conversation. There's some leaders that stand up on the bench and they're clapping and cheering and hooting and hollering, and they get people all pumped up and jazzed up. And then there's others that are those quiet, stable leaders that everybody takes for granted because they don't hear it, but then they see the fruits of their labor of being a leader, a quiet leader. You need all of those. And I try to tell my daughter's more vocal than my son is. And so I just try to tell him, it's like, you don't have to stand on the bleachers and scream and holler, but your performance, how you show up, how you hold people accountable, those type things will resonate, and you can still be quiet and you don't have to say a whole lot.
Right. You don't have to change your entire personality, but you do have to find the best version of that and find ways to make it work for other people. Because if you're playing a team sport, if you're having conversations, it's not about you and how comfortable you are. It has to be what the team needs you to be. So it's a little bit of a both and that I think it takes people just a lot of time to figure that out, and also a safe place to figure that out, because there's some circumstances that you'll walk into a gym and a coach will tell you, you need to change. You need to be a different person. And that's not necessarily a safe place, but the safe place is, I see this in you. I understand this about you. Can you work with me? And can we do more of this? Can we speak up a little bit more? I understand you're quiet, but you do have to talk to us in between points, or whatever it is. Finding a safe space, safe coach who's going to push you in that, while not trying to completely alter your personality, I think is extremely valuable.
Right. And I like what you said, is that it's a two-way street. You also have to have a coach that's willing to be flexible and understand. You've probably seen it all over Instagram lately. I think it's Maryland basketball coach.
Oh yeah, I've got a reel coming up on that one.
Yeah, that she's like, from the outside, it looks like she is lighting that girl up. But then if you slow it down and you see, and she's like, I believe in you. You have to believe in you. And then they interviewed her, and she's like, that's what I've asked her to do. I like to be coached hard. And so that's a conversation that happened between coach and player, because some players, they would freak out if somebody was, because there was nothing bad she was saying, the coach, but like some people just would panic if somebody was in their face like that. But clearly that was a conversation they had. Like, I liked being coached like that. I needed that. And the coach knew how to do that. And if she's a really good coach, she coaches every player on her team slightly different. Again, she's got to be her and coach the way she feels comfortable, but that's the same thing. So hopefully everybody's seeing the translation between sport and life, because I see it a lot.
I mean, sports is life in so many ways, especially since my job is in sports. But I'm just like, sports brings out what's really going on with people. It gives them an outlet for how they really feel. Like I know everybody's got their own thing, but yeah, for me, I'm like, sport just represents what's going on in people's hearts and minds. And I just absolutely love it.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why we love Ted Lasso.
Oh my goodness. He's got so many good one-liners.
I wish. That's when comparison bites me. It's like, I have the heart of Ted Lasso, but I don't have the quick wit of Ted Lasso.
Same.
It'd be nice. I think about it like 20 minutes later. I was like, oh, I could have said that.
It would have been so good.
Yes, but timing is not always my best. But anyways, well, Allison, I know you're very busy. We're approaching an hour, and we could keep doing this for a long time. So what I would love to find out is, what are some parting words that you'd like to leave the audience today?
If are we speaking to parents?
You speak to whatever your heart's telling, to parents, student athletes, people.
I speak mostly to parents, because I feel like parents are the ones making the decisions, right? And I think in terms of what I do, in terms of playing in college, so many parents are reaching out to me when their athletes are 13 or 14, and they're wanting to know how they can stand out to a college coach. And that's not what being 13 and 14 is about. That's not what youth sports is about. If playing in college is the goal, if your athlete loves their sport, if your athlete is passionate about something, that's like the coolest thing ever for your student to find something that they love doing. As a parent, that's like the coolest thing, to see my daughter become obsessed with, different things that she does. It's so cool to be able to see their minds working, them getting proud of themselves. Like, it's so cool to see that. You have to protect that passion, that love for the game, that excitement with everything that you have. And that might be getting them some extra lessons. That might be going to the bigger, nicer club, but it also might not be. It might just be them staying in rec sports, because that's a safe place for them to do that. And they don't want to be traveling 3 times a month, and they don't want to be practicing 4 days a week. It's going to be different for every athlete, but the parents' biggest role is to protect that passion and that love for the game. And when they are playing under a coach who is, I've seen so many athletes over the years quit because of a coach, and they think that they've lost their love for the game. And it's like, no, you've had a really, really crappy experience, and I'm sorry that you've had that. But how can we get back to the love of the game? Can we go play beach volleyball at the park down the road? Can we, finding ways to allow them to be safe in their sport, to enjoy their sport, for me is so much more important than them getting the scholarship or, the offer. Those things are amazing. Those are so cool. Obviously, I'm very passionate about that. But if they're doing that and they have lost their love for the game, they're going to be burnt out by their first preseason. And so there's so much joy and lessons learned and everything else that is lost for the sake of perceived success, perceived greatness. My daughter is a college athlete. My daughter made it to D1, but she hates her day to day. Like, that's not success in my mind. Success is not the scholarship. It's not playing D1. It's not playing in college, period. Does your athlete love what they do? Are they happy in their day to day? Are they able to do what they love to do? So really, for me, parents, your athlete comes to you and says they want to play in college, encourage them. That's amazing. How can I support you? That's not running out and spending all of our money on privates and doing this and doing that. It is finding the way to support them through that dream, finding whether it's somebody like me or just a club coach or somebody who has played in college before that your family knows, like finding somebody for them to talk to and figure out what it takes to get there. Those are all important and beautiful and good. But if we lose our love for the game, we've lost the whole point. So really protect that with everything you have.
That's awesome. Fantastic. So how can people find and follow you?
Yeah, so I hang out on Instagram and TikTok mostly, How to Get Recruited. It's nice and simple. I also have my own podcast as well, the How to Get Recruited podcast. So it's nice and simple. I'd love to connect with you guys. Follow me on there. Shoot me a DM. Would love to talk to you guys.
Awesome. Well, Allison, thank you. I really enjoyed today. And like I said, as I just let the Holy Spirit go, and here we went a full hour.
And it went. He went. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, hang tight. So ladies and gentlemen, Allison Roberts.